Okay.
Good afternoon, or I should say also good morning, as I always do, and good evening welcome to the Entrepreneur Mindset Show. This is Anissa Turan. Sammy, I think I've got a bit of an interference there. I don't know which ones I'm picking it up from, but nevertheless, welcome, Sammy and Tusha. Today we are doing something a little bit different. We have two pioneering gentlemen on the segment today to talk about their journey, their battle scars, and everything that goes with the entrepreneurial journey. I'm going to read a little bit just about their bios, or should I put them on the spot and let them read it themselves? What does the audience think? Now, I'll read a small piece here quickly. So, Sammy is the business development and strategy executive tasked with defining long term strategic goals, building key customer relationships, and identifying business opportunities. His role includes negotiating and closing deals. While creating long term value for customers, he also forms part of the consulting team during implementations. Sammy has 10 years' experience working in the retirement fund industry. Wow. Where his roles included being a senior consultant on various large private pension funds. It's a bit of a mess currently in South Africa, right? This pension fund story, but yeah, we can pick up on that, including 4 years spent in business development role, where he was part of the team that was tasked with growing Old Mutual's client base under assets and assets under management, I should say. For those not in South Africa, Old Mutual, I think they are global, but they're one of the largest blue chip corporates in the financial services segment. So let's move to Tusho. Is the financial director, chartered accountant in South Africa, and oversees all financial operational aspects of the business, from pricing, budgeting, IFRS to strategic planning, financial reporting, and project implementation. Tuso is also responsible for furthering, I love their business name, Lofty Brainchild's business development initiatives. And with his strong IFRS background and understanding of accounting systems, plays a key role in project implementation. He's a qualified chartered accountant, as I've mentioned, with South Africa, with 10 years experience in systems, accounting, auditing, taxation, and corporate finance. Completed his articles, another blue chip in South Africa, at PricewaterhouseCoopers, later relocated to Los Angeles to serve in PwC's assurance division. And upon returning to South Africa, he spent 2 years as a corporate finance manager in PwC's corporate finance division before subsequently joining, I think it's Cleos Capital. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, a mid-market private equity firm in the role of transactor. Tuso was previously a director of Debt Rescue Pty Limited and was a member of the audit committee. I want to actually start just to welcome you both here and say I'm just excited to have this conversation with you and really delve into where, firstly, tell us where Lofty Brainchild, this beautiful name and concept, came about, and the real reason why you started. Welcome, Sammy. Welcome, Tusha. One of you can go ahead. Let's start with Tusha.
Thank you, Anissa. I hope I don't have too much feedback, and thank you to all the viewers. So Lofty Brainchild had its genesis in 2012. At the time, I was in Los Angeles. It was initially not called Lofty Brainchild. It was called Glide Consultancy. The concept pretty much came about through the experiences that I had when I was there, alongside one of our other co-founders, Mateta, who's our managing director, and Ashish. And at that time, we were just exposed to this burgeoning and very thriving entrepreneurial culture. America is a very different world to us here in South Africa. In South Africa, it's almost an exception to the rule to follow entrepreneurship, whereas in America, it's pretty much a set path and one of the options that you get. So becoming a professional doesn't necessarily federate you towards working and employment and building yourself up in the corporate ladder. The entrepreneurial option is a very viable one, and for that, I felt a lot of FOMO, and we got the sense that um, the entrepreneurs that follow before, they tend to support the entrepreneurs that follow after because they've walked through the same path, they've charted the same course, and that was what we saw was sort of missing or still to develop much further in South Africa. That we needed to be the entrepreneurs so that in future we could be those entrepreneurs that have walked the walk and can set a path for the future entrepreneurs that follow after us.
I just want to firstly acknowledge some of our Instagram followers that are here. Welcome, lovely lady Osman. What a name. But she is a lovely lady. I think I know who that is. Thank you for that introduction there. Sammy, do you just want to come in also to share a bit of your perspective? Because I think, when did you join, and were you part of the founding partner committee, or did you join later? Just tell us a bit more from your perspective.
So, in my previous world, I think you read my bio, which was corporate. So during that time, we'd always have these engagements with the Glide team, which would be getting a sense of where their business is, getting a sense of what the challenges they're having are, and also looking for opportunities for the business. So it was more learning how they are running a consultancy, how it's working, and also chiming in terms of what I see could be opportunities which we can jointly explore. So that was prior to that was probably close to when we're at ideation stage, close to when Lofty came up. And at that stage, I think Tusho and Matsetse were really the driving force at that stage. And then I was probably one of the first people who got the call to join in. And I was more than happy to do so. I think the journey within corporate had reached a certain stage, and there was a bit more that I was looking for, and a lot more which would entail working or interrogating how we solve or create a successful consultancy. So with that in mind, we formed together and we became the co-founders together.
Now, I always talk about the backstory because we talk about the battle scars that we have in corporate, and when we have this greater purpose and we feel like we've done our season in corporate and we want to start something for the greater good of humanity. What is your backstory of why you started Lofty Brainchild? So Tisha, I'm going to go over to you so that we can tag team between yourself and Sammy and get your different viewpoints on this.
Thank you, Anissa. So when I came back from Los Angeles, I subsequently left my job at PwC Corporate Finance and moved into a startup private equity firm, which was a startup at the time, Clio's Capital. And that for me was the first opportunity to get roll up my sleeves and be involved in a company that was getting off the ground. And at the time, Clios had raised about R1 billion from various investors, including institutional pension funds. It was quite an eye-opening experience because I went from consulting with mainly large companies, a lot of them listed, a lot of them established, to seeing the the other side of the iceberg, which are all the entrepreneurial companies here in South Africa, the shops that you don't see because they're not listed on the JSE, but that employ tens of peoples, hundreds of peoples, and work very closely with mainly CFOs and CEOs and owners of these companies that we were investing in. First of all, in um, helping them to corporatize their companies. And that's where I saw the art of entrepreneurship from a South African vantage point, where someone can start a business from literally zero in let's say 2008, and then by the time we were entering as private equity, that business has grown to the point where they can sell maybe half of it for something north of 150 million rand. And just the opportunity to create employment, create opportunity where there wasn't, because the big corporates are very important for our society. However, in order for us to alleviate the current unemployment issues that we have, which is why countries like America and European countries have full employment, it's the small and the medium-sized companies that created that. So that's where I really got entrenched and got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, so to speak. And having been on the boards of some of these companies and seeing the stories and the backstories of those entrepreneurs and those mavericks, I then felt the urge to pursue that myself, given that I'd started private equity at a relatively young age, which allowed me the time to sort of work backwards and then move into entrepreneurship after having gone through the full cycle of investing and divestiture in private equity.
So I love that story. So I like that you caught the bug for entrepreneurship based on, what you saw out there, and the bigger why being, how do I serve South Africa? How do I serve the economy? And I'm getting a sense that, what we all strive to reach a point of self-actualization. And so you wanted to do your bit and part to rally others behind you along with your partners, and then whether it's creating employment, so that you could start to bring your contribution to cultivating self-actualized businesses and then contributing to economies and making hopefully South Africa a bit more flourishing in that regard. I know we have a long way ahead for that, but most certainly that was the bigger why. And I love asking this question because it's not always about, I want to earn more money, because both of you have worked for significantly large blue chip companies, right? And you had the global experience to show with PwC, but it was still not enough. It was like, what is my legacy that I'm cultivating here? And is it really I'm working for a corporate and I'm earning this big cushy salary and beautiful benefits that go with it? But so what? What does it actually mean, right? So thank you for sharing that it was about creating employment and more opportunities and almost being pioneers within your space, which we'll get to, as to how do you take your wealth and breadth of experience, your professional learning and development experiences, and make that into an entrepreneurial journey rather than only going to what we were conditioned to believe in the other part of the iceberg, I will say, where I believe so. We meant to go and study, find a job, and earn a good salary and save and. So you decided to be a maverick, if to use your word, and say, let's do something differently. Thank you for sharing that. I want to now go over to Sammy and almost ask him the same thing. What drew him to move away from the comfort zone and almost really say, I'm jumping into this unknown territory of, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I'm up for it.
Maybe if I start also at my what you call the cushy corporate job. I'm not sure everyone calls it that way, but even during that period, um, I found myself always getting involved in terms of with other parties. It could be friends, it could be close associates that were engaged in some form of small business. So part of it could be there was limited involvement. In one, there was actually ownership, but not operational. So there were a lot of learning curves that were going on in terms of people that needed certain skills or that needed someone a bit more technical. They've got the passion about it, about their business idea, and they just needed help for a bit of support in terms of how to make it work. So I had a bit of experience there. There were quite interesting outcomes. It was not as easy as it sounds to be. There's lots of um, kind of ups and downs. It's quite a long journey just to get it to where it should be. So, in my view, that was very enticing. It was quite challenging, sounded quite challenging, but it was enticing in the sense that if we're to find a good project that we could work on, then that would be the one that we would be able to commit, especially if the right infrastructure and the right people were around. We could commit around and say, okay, this is the one we're going for, and this is the one we're going to make work. So that was also a personal challenge, which still exists, which is to make it work and make it work beyond what I'd even thought it would reach the status. And that also would include other aspects of similar to what Tusha mentioned of being a significant player in the economy, which is just basically hiring, being able to employ people, being able to give alternative career paths, or being able to at least provide work experience to graduates. So there's quite a good spillover of benefits with the business going well. That also spills over to just which would be similar to other businesses in the economy as well. That the better they succeed, there's a lot of other people that become beneficiaries, not just the owners and the staff, but also everyone who's around that in the immediate environment.
I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm getting a sense that there's this deep desire to pay it forward in your case, Sammy. So taking on this role was more around how do I impart knowledge, transfer skills, mentor, guide, and really just be holding a space for those that are coming into this environment, because both of you are professionals and you qualified and experienced in working in that corporate. So taking that battle scars, how do I then take that battle scars into the entrepreneurial journey for the people that we employ or other stakeholders that cross my path? And I'm getting a sense that there's also this desire for people and planets and profit. The triple P bottom line factor is quite pivotal in your journey for you, Sammy. I that's what I'm getting a sense, at least. You need to correct me if I'm wrong. That's the bigger why of why you decided to jump, not from the cushy corporate, because it's hard, and that's why I use the word battle scars. We all have our corporate battle scars, but it's how do we take those battle scars and turn that into the pursuit of the greater purpose behind it. And that's what I'm getting at, is that you saw a greater purpose of all that you've learned and acquired in that professional realm to now apply it in the entrepreneurial journey, using a growth mindset approach and not this fixed mindset of why things can't happen. Rather, here's the possibilities of why it can happen. Did I understand that that's how you perceive your journey to be?
Yes,
Sammy?
and I'd also add there was a lot of excitement as well. I think when there's always a bit of nerves, which is jumping into the unknown, but there's a lot of excitement, which is enthusiasm that's required as well, just to be able to drive things forward with the right energy. So I think I do agree with your summation of it. I think you said it a bit more succinctly than I did, but that's definitely part of the start of the journey, what kicked it off.
I'm going to continue with you now, so we kind of swap it around with the flow. So let's talk about the lows, because it's not always a high point, right? And that nerves, that adrenaline, that really dark periods where you're feeling like, when is there going to be light at the end of this tunnel? What were some of those pain points for yourselves as an entrepreneur? So I'll start with you, Sammy.
Yeah, I think the lows would usually come when you're measuring what the expectation should be, or where you feel where we felt we should have been, or certain achievements we should have made, and then maybe that's not happening at the point in time. So if I give an example, it could be spending a lot of time chasing a lucrative prospective client, going through the normal cycle, approaching and engaging with them, and not getting to the finish line. And then looking to see, okay, what happened? Why didn't we get there? Kind of that level of introspection. So there's a lot of those that do happen in business. There's a lot of promises. There's a lot of maybe being too optimistic. There's some which are so-called guaranteed, but they don't turn that way. So I'd say those probably would be the bigger parts of the lows, in the sense that those really kind of ask you to recalibrate to see if you've got any new tricks that can solve this problem, and just to keep the temperament and the belief on the chart that's going forward. But they are quite a challenge, and I mean they're probably the same challenges that still are there now, which is part of the growth story for the business. Just wanting it to get to that part. So chasing that part is always the I'd say one of the toughest parts of a business. But keeping perseverance is also something that's very useful in terms of not worrying too much about the lows, but also just working through knowing they are there.
I'm hearing a lot of chasing and hustling, and the fact that we going out there to prove our worth as entrepreneurs, we're selling the sizzle, and that sometimes is to our detriment, because when we out there selling the sizzle and selling instead of consulting and being partnerships in that conversation around how we can serve, that is often to our detriment, I find, in the entrepreneurial journey. When we have conviction of what it is we're serving with, we don't need to chase or hustle. And we don't spend a lot of time in that exchange with that client. So your feedback was that you're spending quite a bit of time, long periods of time, in trying to convert the business, and with expectations that it would have converted, and then it does not realize. So I guess what I'm alluding to is that when we are values aligned and we know our worth, we don't need to chase or hustle. So that's a big pain point I find in the entire landscape of the entrepreneurial journey for many, many entrepreneurs. I'm very glad that you've raised that here. Trisha, let's talk about your pain points. And I want to hear the raw stuff. I want to hear the down, outright ugly stuff. The times that you were feeling really down and you just wanted to throw in the towel, even potentially. What were some of those? Enlighten us.
Okay, maybe just as sort of like a baseline across all the co-founders, including those not on the call. When we started it was just for the journey's sake. I think there was partly some naivety that we weren't even envisaging it as becoming something that would be full-time the way it is now. And we always had the saying that we're not attached to the outcome. We'll connect the dots backwards, and hindsight will be 2020. Creating a brand such as Lofty Brainchild, which means that it's almost aspiring to something that's higher than the sky being the limit, was part of the motivation for coming up with the name, which Mateta, our partner, came up with, the co-founder. And it's been a journey, a ride from seeing it being inceptioned into being, which in itself existentially ticked quite an exciting box. Then watching the world interact with this creation, this idea, this novel concept of a Lofty Brainchild, and it manifesting in corridors in German offices, which is where our partners are from, all the way across the other side of the world. And we were doing all of this while we had full-time employment, almost after hours. We weren't watching Netflix. We weren't we weren't fishing on the weekend. So we were doing Lofty. But one thing is, there is a certain level of hubris that is attached to the safety and the certainty of being sort of full-time employed. I myself, working in private equity, and the position I held, where, for lack of a better term, you week in, week out, day in, day out, you have people who, for the most part, have net worths running into the hundreds of millions, asking Tusho to
Mhm.
help them invest in their business. So I did have a bit of a power trip, to be honest. I did feel I was a big cheese, and I loved telling people when I met them that I worked in high finance, but people came to me asking and for something, whereas now I was on the reverse and pursuing something that, from an aptitude perspective or competency, sales was always out of my competencies. I never worked in sales. I could model financially, I could structure transactions, I could figure out very
Yes.
complex strategic issues. But to get a call, to answer, to pick up the phone and just follow up with somebody and ask them, hey, I sent you my proposal last week. You did say you were going to get back to me on Friday. Do you want to get back to me? So then an imposter syndrome sometimes starts festering. Then you start feeling like you're not as
Yes.
smart as you always thought you were. And then I always, like, if if I think about it, is like, um there's I'm just gonna quickly share the screen, just for I came across this term, that Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you guys see it.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
pretty much have gone full cycle of Dunning-Kruger effect, and that's where the pain points is, that there weren't no pain points until it started working out, because it was like, this is a side thing, and then suddenly it's like there's nothing more interesting and exciting to do other than this thing. Then now you start becoming a bit more anxious about it working out or not. And the interesting part is, when we started, we thought it was all figured out because it was very easy and there wasn't really too much at stake. Whereas now there's a lot more at stake. We have stakeholders that rely on us. We have a very exciting and I could say impressive repertoire of clients, and from the smallest to the biggest, we treat them all the same, and touching their lives. And people who work with Lofty Brainchild are people who are enticed and amenable or inclined to the name itself. It doesn't put them off. That was always a risky thing. It's like you're selling systems and softwares. Your name should be something sys or whatever, pneumatics or AI this. But we just felt that it's the intention and the what can I say? It's almost like a child. That innocence was Lofty Brainchild. We started it from an innocent perspective, and we would like to keep that innocence even throughout the growth stages. So you do go through the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you realize the more that you start to actually be competent, the less competent you realize you are.
Yes. 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 Definitely resonates, and in fact, in my coaching training, we learned a lot about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and imposter syndrome is something that is prevalent in all of us, no matter who we are, whether we PhD students or whether we're not. The question is, how do we alchemize imposter syndrome? And it seems and appears to me that you guys have alchemized it. You've used it to your advantage. Whilst it was there, it's humbled you and brought you right down back to earth, thinking, well, hold on. On paper, I'm, what did you call it? I don't know what you call it, but I'm going to call it the bee's knees or the big cheese
Yes.
or whatever we're going to
Yes.
call it. And the
Yes.
reality is that when we can come in knowing nothing and really start to understand that we're here to learn, but we're also here to unlearn and relearn ways of being. That's when alchemy starts, because we want to alchemize new ways of being, and we come back to purpose. And I love that you also said we come back to intention, because when the intent is robust, it is purposeful and values aligned. But when it is more about being the big cheese, then imposter syndrome will hit you so hard to get you come back to zero, right? And then only at this point did we realize, but okay, hold on. Let me just walk alongside everyone on this journey and not think I'm above. And neither am I below, but I love to use that term even in my coaching space. I'm not above you, I'm neither below you, but we're walking alongside each other on this journey. So thank you for sharing that honest account, because we do forget that we come in here with this beautiful idea and this novel idea and this insane name like Lofty Brainchild. I was like, well, it speaks volumes, right? It's you can't mess with this group of gentlemen. It's Lofty Brainchild. So what does this actually mean, right? So I appreciate that. I just want to greet Tabang Kumalo, who's here with us. Hello, my people, he says. Hello, Tabang. Thank you for being here. Any questions you might have for the panel that's here, Tabang? Please don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to move on. So we have now talked about a bit of those pain points, right? And I like that we have touched on aspects that it's got to do with mindset as well. That is why the segment is called the Entrepreneur Mindset, because we can move into ego and arrogance and it can slowly bring us back down. But having a growth mindset is pivotal to this journey. However, let's shift a bit gears now. The support. Support is very important on the entrepreneurial journey. Let's understand from you in your earlier start, what did that look like or not look like? What was missing? And what have you found was the right level of support in order to accelerate you to get to this point where you are right now? Tusha, we can start with you.
Thank you, Anissa. Support is actually the cornerstone of it all. You know, it was myself and Sammy supporting each other to brainstorm the pivot of moving from Glide, which is purely consulting, building data warehouses, analytics, and business intelligence for some of the big banks, to Lofty Brainchild, where we would now also introduce product and more recurring streams of revenue into the mix. So that I enrolled Sammy's support to say, we've done a lot of entrepreneurial things in our private personal capacities. We worked separately, professionally, but let's brainstorm something, as Sammy mentioned earlier, that we could is worthwhile putting our energies into. And at the time, he was unwinding some of his initial entrepreneurial adventures, as was I. And it was, how do we take all of that, consolidate it, and then chart a specific path going forward, so we're not all over the place. Then it becomes the support from your partners and your co-founders, in the sense that no man is an island. You cannot do this alone. Even just from a belief perspective, as and when I'm not feeling so motivated, Sammy is always a lot more optimistic than I am as a human being. It's in his nature, and that I leverage on as core support every time and any time. And then it's support from family as well, close family, in the sense that having the patience to see you see it through, and easing that societal pressure, because not just because people aren't, not everybody's doing it, it doesn't mean it can't be done, which is what we're seeking to prove. And then everybody wonders why Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are going to space. It's because they started in some garage somewhere, because that's where most of the most incredible things in the world do start, and they actually do get there. And if anything, it's really appreciating that accepting support, leveraging support is the bedrock that actually gets you there. Then you bring in support from, for example, we got into a partnership with Level Up, and the support that's been bringing us in, taking us away from where our business hit revenue, and now we were spending so much time working in the business, and then everyone's always telling you work on the business, work on yourself, because you're a business owner, you're not an employee anymore. And then being able to actually on your own, you have an idea that that's the right thing to do, but having support for that has been quite a game changer. Support from having champions within some of the most upper echelon corporates in the country, where as much as you want to feel imposter syndrome, you find that you're getting love and appreciation and opportunities from the places where you least expect it, but somebody in there or people within there support you in helping you navigate those uncharted waters to land you in places that you never imagined you'd ever be able to land, and you possibly wouldn't be able to land on your own. So that's that. Let me end there. But that's support is one of the core fundamental ingredients to the game.
Mm. I had a lot of different level of support. And I like that you touched on, this is a system and there's a systemic nature to also owning a business, and that you're not actually alone, that there is family. And if we understand the full iceberg effect, we've used iceberg twice, so let me continue on that momentum of the iceberg, because if you understand what are the drivers and the restrainers, sometimes there are family dynamics that play a role that could be a restrainer, unfortunately, and not necessarily that we want to have the family dynamic interfering in the business, but we got to kind of find a way to, what's the sweet spot in balancing. So leveraging that support from family is a salient point that you raise there, and we forget and we undermine that fact. And I also enjoy the fact that you've highlighted the outside support, and we are very grateful and blessed to have you in the Level Up family. And we also blessed that RCS as a corporate, as as a financial services, runs a program like this. And we know that our differentiator is it's not a transactional relationship. It's not just you're on a program and we say goodbye. So, Sammy, I'm going to come to you with this direction of the question around support. Other than what Trisha's already mentioned, what are your thoughts around cross-collaboration support within other entrepreneurial spaces? Do you rely within the ecosystem of other entrepreneurs, or does it only stay with, and also government, because you've got great contacts and relationships in the corporate sector, naturally so. But for those that don't, what do they need to be relying on? Is it government? Is it other entrepreneurs? Is it community involvement? What should that look like, Sammy?
I think there isn't a one specific answer where you could point someone and say, "Oh, is this the support you want? Go find it at XYZ." So just through engagements, through going through the journey itself, there's a lot of individuals that you do meet. Maybe they're representing corporates, or maybe they are connections, or they know people that know you, and being able to articulate with them and in a way that they understand, such that they can conceptualize and see what journey you're on and how they can either themselves say, "This is what I can do. What do you think of this?" Or, "I know someone here who does this and this. How does that sound as a fit for your journey?" So a lot of these things come from just engaging with people, because you engaging with people all the time, all the time. Then there's a bit of pressure in terms of being able to crystallize that person as a support for their
Mm.
support. I'll give an example. When we started, we had a, I'd say a partner who we knew from other work environments, and once she understood what we were doing, she basically said, "Okay, you guys are actually offering a service that I also offer to my clients." And once we crystallized that, since then we've been working together for years and years. So now we still work together because there was an alignment, and we found that out very quickly. And we also were quick to establish how we would work together. And then since then, it's been growing from year to year. So that's one good
Mm.
example. That's an example where the support can be taken tangibly, and you can actually apply it in certain parts of the business. So with finding other support, for example, we've had lots of engagements. If I put them, we call them BDSPs, Business Development Supply Providers, who are similar to what Level Up would be, who run programs
Mhm.
on behalf of corporates. We engaged with a lot of those, but we've saw there's always a big challenge in terms of alignment. So alignment would be what would we want to achieve from a relationship with these guys? And for them, what do they want in terms of having, let's say, if they called us a beneficiary of their project or program? So we thought, we just running a business. Obviously, they help businesses. Therefore, it doesn't get better than that, right? Wrong.
Mm.
It's not as because everyone has certain outcomes that they're looking for, and it's what we found to be more useful is to be more understanding of what we are trying to achieve. Then we can be able to say, okay, we are able to work with this this level, this type of a partner, because we would think, oh, it's quite simple what we want, right? But it's not necessarily simple in the sense of the scope of the partner that you are engaging. So marrying those together, that one I'd say for not just for us, but for also all entrepreneurs, it's finding the partners that really and being able to discern which are which partners are the ones you want to spend a lot more time with, but also what milestones can you achieve together with the partner? Because usually once you achieve a milestone sooner rather than later, it allows it to fester and to grow. If there's a bit of a lag, it's always much more difficult to unpack that again. So from a support perspective, that kind of finding the right partners that can give us a broad context could be looking at soft skills, which are skills of engagement, which are just
Mhm.
skills. I mean, we quite technically good at certain items, but there's always bit of a skills deficit in certain areas where once that's identified, it's always good to rope in partners that can help with that. So that could be along the lines of how to engage with prospective clients, how to what type of messaging you should use, which lets people understand quicker. Also, the importance of maybe having mentors or coaches as well.
Mhm.
What does that can how that it can influence the outcomes that we are trying to achieve internally as well, and just in general, is within the network of people we work with, um, let's say across or have worked with, um, just making sure that they understand what we are actually doing, and then being able to work with their network, because we find people are
Mhm.
quite positive in terms of, oh, is this what you're doing? Okay, how can I help? So being able to be succinctly um, engaged with that, and also being able to have a path afterwards in terms of, okay, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and then we can measure whether the support is working. So from that sense, I'm looking at it more from a business perspective, where there's a lot of
Mhm.
support that's required. I mean, lots of people would say, do you need money? every business needs money, but I don't think you need debt money. You probably need a
Mm,
client
mm.
paying you on time rather than over leveraging yourself. So those are nuances you learn as you go along the journey, but there's always a learning curve. So you need to just keep your mind open to that.
Lots of golden nuggets there, Sammy. And just for me to summarize that, and then I'll acknowledge some of the Instagram comments. I'm getting a sense that one has to learn to say no as entrepreneurs. And I have discovered that that is not a superpower of entrepreneurs. They don't know when to say no. So they take on everything. And because it's support, why not? Let me take it on. However, the other more pertinent point that you raised, that if it's not values aligned, then it's not going to be a fruitful shared value exchange. I heard you use the word spend, and I have sort of a visceral feeling to the word spend versus invest time. Because when we're spending time, we're not always getting that return on that investment. But when we're investing time, we know that there's a shared value exchange, and we can tangibly measure, as you say, the outputs or the core objectives of that support structure in place between the collaborative partnerships that you've developed. So I'll go over to Instagram. I see Uzu's just joined and Andre Oka has joined. He says, where in Cape Town do you network your business? Or how do you attend networking events? Or how can you get invited to networking events? I do think, Sammy, you also highlighted the importance of networking, maybe not necessarily answering all Andre's questions there, but very valid. Should we be at all these networking events, or is that a matter of spending versus investing time? Right? So I think we covered the support one quite broadly. I think we have 14 or maybe 13 minutes remaining. I have just two directions I want to take the conversation flow into. And whilst you've both shared some great nuggets already, what would you tell other entrepreneurs around what this journey encapsulates? What are those challenges or lessons that you want to share with other entrepreneurs and founders? Chuso.
It's a middle distance race, and we came to learn that, and we're actually quite relieved in finding out that one of our biggest competitors, which is a very established multi-billion rand company, took just as long as we did to land a first major implementation for one of their new sort of software tools. And now, I mean, we're talking of a corporate behemoth, big teams, lots of resources, and then suddenly, then you don't feel that you're as dumb as you thought you were, or as inadequate, because it really is that difficult. And we did it with far less resources. So then every now and again you need to give yourself a pat on the back. You need to have balance as well, because that's what keeps you going, and in your value systems is, you start to learn, especially when you realize it's a middle distance race, and that desperation that you were saying, as soon as you let go. And some, for example, we had I just spoke to somebody from a prospect today, and it's something that we initiated in January, and then we thought it's going to boom 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 work out very quickly, big multinational international client. And then it went quiet, and then we heard they were speaking to a competitor, and then we went through, like, sort of the down points where we felt we did it wrong, our approach was wrong, we look wrong, everything that's has to do with self-deprecation. But what you don't realize is that something was happening in the background of which we don't have control. So a lot of things happen that you don't necessarily have to have control or have control of, and it often happens, and then something that you thought had fallen by the wayside comes back. The keeping to the why and that's something that along the way you tend to lose sight of, because we are human after all. We do every now and again default to keeping up with the Joneses and the like. But when the why is to set a guiding path for the next generation of non-professionals and professionals, especially us being professionals, not saying that one is more important than the other. We almost want to see a future where the Gen Z and the Gen after. In fact, Gen Z is already entrepreneurial anyway. A lot of them are, are influencers, etc. But we were always the our business is in the most formal part of the formal economy, and we don't want it to just be when young people start a business. It's something that's more just the arts. Not saying anything against the arts, but also saying that young people can start mainstream businesses that are in the heart of corporate South Africa, the corporate world internationally, and make their mark there. And that is a why that's even more important than all the things that we feel like you may have missed out on, but you're actually not missing out on anything. So having that, and then having a support structure around you that encourages you. For example, even at home, someone like my dad was like, he is like, because he's worked and he's retired, so he knows that the world is very different to when he was working. So he worked the same place for like 40 years. There was that loyalty between employer and employee. Nowadays, I'm not saying it's gone, but it's no longer a slam dunk anymore. Slight blip in the economy, and then you hear this rationalization. So the new people need to adapt to new forms of survival. The AI machine is here as well. So in deciding which career you're going to follow and doing which job you're going to follow, for example, one of my previous jobs, I always felt like at some point a machine is going to do this. So a machine is going to do this report. A machine is going to do this calculation and this model. And Bob's your mother's other brother, somebody was pitching to me a tool that literally did what I used to do 10 years ago. So we're always trying to preempt guess problems that are maybe a few years into the future. And the one thing is start. There's nothing worse than not starting, because you only have a finite amount of years on Earth in general. Even if you live till 100, and then you even have a more finite amount of working years, and your level of enthusiasm and energy for it will start to be very different the more you advance as a stage in life, and you almost don't want to have a chip on your shoulder about it. The avenues are there. There's so many avenues. I mean, for example, even with us being a team that's very reticent on um, jumping into funding, etc. And that's not our business model. We have nonetheless been able to be blessed with funding without even asking for it from some of our clients, but it's just based on the relationships, how you treat human beings, and empathizing with their position and them empathizing with yours. And the fact that up to now we've been able to retain 99% of the clients we've started with. There's only one where the lady who was our champion happened to leave and there wasn't much of a hangover. That's the only one instance. And the other one, the company got liquidated. But from the smallest invoice up to the largest one, all those clients are still with us right now in 2024, and I'll bet my bottom dollar that they'll be with us for the next 10 years, and it's to treat them the same way as they've always treated. And it's that kind of support. It's people giving you the opportunity to really prove yourself and to really thrive within the environment, but we also giving them the opportunity to succeed in their work, which is a very reciprocal, very human exchange, and it's the essence of what keeps us enthusiastic about what we're doing, and encourages us to just double down and keep peeling at this onion and seeing how far it can go.
sage advice there. And if I had to sum it up, or the golden nuggets, it's the thief of comparison. Let's not focus on comparison, because we are not needing to compare ourselves if we know our true worth and our essence. And if we are guided by a sound value system and pure intent, that and the relationship is meaningful, that in and of itself will cultivate, and not only cultivate, but amplify transformation. And lastly, that I'm summing up, and I'm not doing it justice necessarily, but I'm trying to be as succinct, is celebrate being in pursuit of, and not just thinking you need to get to the end destination. Because the pursuit of is the beauty and the alchemy within that journey that is really going to be the one thing that transitions you to drive the transformation that you so desire to have. And it would happen almost unconsciously, because you're remaining in truth. You're remaining true to the ethos of your business, your personality, your value systems, etc. And lastly, I think you've also spoke about balance. I think it's more about finding integration between our lives, between being a business owner, being a professional, being a human being, and understand that I'm still a human being and that I'm fallible and I'm willing to learn and unlearn. So that's my summary to you. I hope I've done it justice before we move on to Sammy. Sammy, some of your challenges and lessons. And then we're going to go into one final thing around the vision for the future. So just maybe one or two nuggets, or three, however many you have to share around these challenges that you want to share with other entrepreneurs and founders.
I think I'll also start with the why, which is just to keep that not in the back pocket only, but probably in a wide screen somewhere closely accessible, just to keep you motivated on that level of intent. Then when we look at the journey itself, a lot of it is, I'd say, a lot of inflection points where you need to learn from and to move on. So there's a lot of engagements that are, there's a lot of all sorts of discussions, but some of the things that need to be grounded should be just having a good focus on what are the drivers that will lead you to success, and also being able to measure, let's say, small success, mild success, and different levels of success. So you can actually be able to channel your problem solving skills to attaining those. So it's not just one big, whoa, we want to be this big whale after 10 years. It's more incrementally. What are those milestones you can see going bit by bit, which will also give that level of reassurance that you're on the right track. And just to that would be, I'd say, partnerships that you have. Make sure those ones you really work them well, like what Tusha's described now. We've got clients that are still sitting with us. It's because we know our servicing model is still got room for improvement, but we do not compromise on that part, which is to make sure that we go 100% and make sure that not just servicing the client on let's say one service or one solution, there could be potentially other opportunities within the client or within the client's network as well. So there's a good spillover effect that does come from that. So I'd say, in a nutshell, no, I can see we're running out of time. That's what I would say. That's the journey we are on as well, in terms of some of those challenges and goals that we want to achieve. But it could be applicable to other entrepreneurs as well. And the vision for the future is to keep going.
Very well stated there, Sammy. Sammy, before you go on to the vision, very well stated there. So stay in the pursuit of, even if there are trials and challenges along the way, know that your robust relationships and the partnerships that you cultivate during this period is really what's going to sustain you in the long run. Move on to the vision. Tell us what's next. Where's this going from here on out?
I'd say similar to what I mentioned just earlier, which is just to see incremental improvements and being able to say um, we would want to reach a certain size or maybe a certain number of clientele or a certain maybe number of employees, having certain targets that can be incrementally worked on. And the future's bright with that. It needs a lot of wheeling and dealing, but that part is normal in terms of what needs to happen, but also just keeping in mind the journey of why and also where you want to be at certain intervals and not looking too far ahead or too short-sighted, just having a different stagger of milestones that you'd want to achieve. In terms of the future, I'd say we are on that journey as well, going through the different staggers and obviously wanting to reach one and move on to the next. But firstly, just wanting to reach one grounded and make sure at that stage we are comfortable and then we are in a position to move forward such that we don't overextend ourselves where then you might find there could be a few areas which weren't properly done and in pursuit of a grander vision. So it's the incremental steps and just keeping it going.
Love that, Sammy. Tusho, in closing for you, what is the vision for the future?
Yes, so yeah, so the incremental steps, definitely it's the approach that we prefer. So we don't get our fingers burnt. We take it in bite-sized chunks. And it's been very, very beneficial and advantageous for us to take that approach. And we're at the coal phase of the revolution in the way in which the services that we provide are assisting the environments that and the pain points of our clients. So digital financial reporting, when we started back in 2018 as Lofty Brainchild in its current form, was more of an advocacy type of topic. We were spending a lot of time in, and to answer maybe the networking question, we spent a lot of time within the chambers of commerce. So we became a member of the German chamber, the French chamber, we met the Dutch chamber, and and we were building ourselves as well as environments such as Abasa. We were building the cohorts and of audience and priming them on these new trends that are actually going to improve their lives, because ultimately we improve people's lives. We remove the errors and whatever they do. We give them a lot more time to do life as opposed to do manual things that they didn't necessarily have to be doing. So we want to make our mark on corporate South Africa, not only corporate South Africa, but we also have a lot of opportunities that we pursue outside of South Africa. We've had inquiries from as far as Madagascar, Kenya, and making a real footprint for the Lofty Brainchild name across the continent as well, going as far as the Middle East, and then being able to give back in terms of that, where we will get to a point where we can also create our own innovative products, obviously not competing with our software partners, but maybe for a more lower or more sort of SMME end of the market, which we currently don't necessarily cater for, and making their lives easier, making it more accessible and cost effective. So, and enabling businesses that don't have the resources to be able to scale up without necessarily having additional costs. So that's our grander vision, amongst other things. But as Sammy said, the future is definitely bright. And we're really, really excited to see ourselves through this next growth phase. I mean, for example, we sat with one of our recent clients, and they're just so proud that they've gone from working on a spreadsheet with, I think, almost 50 tabs to now having something on a tool. But they essentially called us and they said, "Do you guys want to work together? Here's what how we can accommodate each other." And then seeing that through that journey together is really, really the exciting part, and looking forward to doing many more of those and bringing more people on board to helping us with that.
On that beautiful note, I want to say that the future is bright because you're not only going to create employment, you're creating accessibility, you're improving lifestyles, you're almost going to come back full circle. As much as you're going global and growing this brand and its footprint, you're not forgetting the SMME. And you're saying, let's pay it forward and bring this back to the environment, because they're not going to remain a small, medium enterprise forever. So I want to thank you for being here with us, and really an enlightening and inspiring conversation with you. And I do look forward to having all of the members back on again and to share some of that bright future that might be realized in the not so distant future, I suppose. And yeah, I just want to say thank you. And I suppose my colleague Tabang says bright indeed. And I'm going to close off on the live so you can extend your goodbyes to those that have been here. Over to you, Tisha, to say goodbye, and Sammy.
Yes, thank you, Nisa, and the audience, and thank you for the opportunity to be on the platform. We really, really enjoy these opportunities to share our story, because we do believe it's quite unique, and we do believe it's and do hope that it's inspiring to others, not to second guess themselves, but to take the leap. But obviously, in incremental steps, it's not impossible, and it's a heap of fun. The challenges are just part of the fun. And I loved what you said, that it's all about the journey. And when you're on the journey, you want to just not look at a destination. You want to look outside the window, because there's trees there, there's mountains here, there's birds there,
Yes.
there's fauna, there's flora, and that's part of the exciting part of pursuing this entrepreneurial journey which we find ourselves on.
Thank you. Sammy, thank you. Any last
And
comment?
yes, I'd like to just thank you firstly. I know when you first mentioned the show, it's been a while since we first spoke about it until being there. But thank you for your perseverance, because I'm really happy that we actually were able to join you in the session. I think it also gives us quite a bit of introspection as well, but it also
Yes.
gives a lot to other viewers as well, or other people who are going on the same journey, in terms of just keeping um, focused on what's important at hand, and just enjoying it as well, but also just working hard enough to make it succeed, so you can reap the benefits of that. So thank you a lot for the time and for the engagement, and I'll definitely be joining in on other ones when you host other people, so we can also be able to give a bit of feedback as well, and have that level of engagement going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gents. I'm going to end the live. You can stay for a brief debrief. And so I'll end here, and then I'll also end. Until next time, I'll see you guys next week again, for those that do join us. And thanks for your comments and engagement. So let's end